Hi everyone, welcome to the first Adobe Campaign Administration for Beginners. During this recording, we're going to talk about setting up an environment, going through the Explorer view, the administration, looking at profiles and targets, and also some other sort of overviews of the Adobe Campaign console for beginners. Firstly, I'd like to mention that the console that I will be using is a sandbox environment that we've had provisioned recently from Adobe, and because of this you may see some features that you don't have in a current console with a client, but also you may see that some of the features are not working due to this being a sandbox environment. So to begin, this will be the screen that you will see after you've installed the client console onto your laptop. An interesting point to note is that until now there is no possibility to have a download for Mac, and with that you now need to use a virtual machines. You can see that I'm using a virtual machine for this Adobe Campaign installation, and it works quite well. So to set up the connections to your environment, you will first have to have provisioned your installation with Adobe. Adobe then will provide to your admin account user some credentials and the URL of your environment. To then set up the connection for this environment, you must go to File, Connections. Within here, what you will do is you will click Add Connection, and you can see that you're giving the option to give this connection a name. So we might name it Veritier Production Environment. And within here, you add the URL provided by Adobe. One important thing to note is that a lot of times when people copy and paste the URL in here, it adds a white space at the end. That white space will lead to error messages coming up when you try to log in, and it has caused some issues in the past with clients. So always make sure that there are no white spaces at the end of your URL. So once you've added your URL here and made sure to not include a white space, you'll notice that you can select this box, Connect with an Adobe ID. This is another feature that allows a user to log in with an Adobe ID separate to a local login. In the beginning, I would recommend just to not tick this box and to use the credentials that you've been given as a local user. If, for example, you already have a console that is connected to the admin console and has the IMS configuration set up with Adobe, which takes a few days, then yes, of course you can use an Adobe ID. Until then, I would recommend leaving this unticked. Another important point to note, something that you will need to ask Adobe to do before provisioning your environment, or if you're working with a client who has given you access to their environment, is that you will need to raise a request to have your IP whitelisted through Neolane. Neolane being the support and the previous owners of this Adobe product. They were acquired by Adobe, and a lot of the support and documentation you'll see will mention the word Neolane. That's an important topic to make sure you get completed before you try to access, as you will get some error messages to tell you that your IP is not whitelisted. So once that's complete, I will just hit cancel because I've already got my connection in place. You will then you will see that the connection you're using is for this instance, the Veritier Sandbox. Your login details here, your password, and then you just click login. Sometimes when you very first log in, you will actually get pointed to this screen. Now please, again, this is where I mentioned that because we're using a sandbox, we get some script errors, but hopefully when you have a real instance, these do not occur. But on first login, this screen that I'm about to show you will be where you will start. Now there are two login views with Adobe Campaign. One is this kind of home with the navigation bar along the top, and there's a second Explorer view. For the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to focus mostly on the Explorer view, as this is what I feel is the best way to find your way around the system. Another important point is that this Explorer view, as mentioned when I first started this webinar, will look different for most clients. For our sandbox, it's sort of in a different format than a current client that I'm working with. There's also some extra features here that we might have because of the build version that we are on. And to check the version of application that you're using, you will go into Tools. We will go to Help, About, and here you can see that your Adobe Campaign Classic, the build is the server of the actual build. So we are on 9031, which is the most up to date. And the client installation is the application server, which is version 7.9026. So ideally you want to be using the same or very close to the same client console with the same build. Using some that are maybe have big differences in the release can cause your console and your client installation to behave wrong, and you might find some errors with the system. So before I go any further, I'd like to talk about domain delegation. This is an important topic to discuss for anyone using a production environment, and it's something that requires a few weeks of Adobe support, as well as some of your internal infrastructure with your client, to ensure that the domains that you provide Adobe to authorize are already delegated within your email infrastructure. You will once provided to Adobe, so for example, you might provide Adobe the domain marketing@veritier.com. The way to check that the tech ops work has been complete and that this is an authorized domain is to click on Tools, go to Advanced, go to Deployment Wizard. Within Deployment Wizard, you will see some things here, but we want to focus on for this topic by clicking Next, click Next again, and here you can see sender name is for the Sandbox Geometrics Outdoors, and the sender address is the important one. So this for us would be marketing@veritier.com, and within this area here is where you will see, once the tech ops have completed their work, authorized sender addresses. So if there is nothing here right now, that means we cannot send anything from this environment because they have not delegated domains. That's a very important piece of information for the production environment, and something that I will go into a bit further in different webinars, but for now this is just important to note that there is some work from Adobe that needs to be completed before you can send from your production environment. So to continue on, let's go back to the Explorer view. I'd like to start first with the access management, which entails how you create users, how you create operator groups, and different permissions and roles in the system. To find access management, you expand on administration. You then click on access management, and you will see that you have operators, operator groups, named rights, dashboards, and organizational entities. For this webinar, we will focus on operators, operator groups, and named rights. It's important to note here that for this kind of setup and creating new operators and operator groups, you will need administration rights. That will mean in the beginning, the person who received the credentials from Adobe with the provisioning of the environment will be able to set up these steps. They can also then create second or third admin users who can help support with these topics. So firstly, let's look at operators. Operators are single users or a person that are created within Adobe Campaign Console. So to create a new operator, you can see this blue icon on the top right. You click here. You give that operator a name. So for this purpose, let's call it Veritier Mark. You give them a password. This can be any password you want. Just make sure it's always within your company policy. Label, this is just something to know who this person is. So maybe marketing team employee. And then their email address. So then within this, you want to add them into some operator groups. But in the meantime, let's save this operator and speak about operator groups. Again, if you find something like this in your sandbox, just click yes and continue. Operator groups are actual roles that you will see we get provided out of the box. So Adobe provides some operator groups, for example, administrator, campaign managers, central management, offer managers, etc. You can, of course, create your own operator groups. You can build on the original out of the box and add some further permissions, but that is up to you. For the purpose of this demonstration, I will go back to the operator Mark that I just created. I will click on him. I will go to Edit, And this is where I can start to build this operator's permissions and roles out. If I click on access rights, you can see here that at the moment this operator has no access rights. So if they were to log in, they would see nothing. Here you can add, and you will see then the operator groups that we just looked at appear on the screen. So let's give this user administrator operator rights. This means this operator has now got the administrator operator group that is out of the box by Adobe. If you want to save, it's always important to click here. Let's go back and have a look at what that operator group consists of. So if we click on administrator, we go into content, you can see here that you can see I've been added to this group, but also you can see here something called named rights. So named rights for me are something, and sorry, not just for me, but from Adobe, are things that operate above the operator group. So for example, if I close this and I go into named rights, you can see here that we have things like export, so the right to export data, import, the right to import data, local handling, merge, a lot of sort of technical extra permissions that you might not want everyone to have. So for example, if I go back to the operator that I created and I click edit and go to access rights again and click add, you'll note that here is again the operator groups. However, if I select the drop down, I then have the ability to add the named rights as well. So let's add administration. Let's also add the right to export, and let's save. An important point here is that I would not recommend jumping straight in and creating operator groups and named rights. It is really, really important to do a good planning session, involve your Adobe consultant, involve previous Adobe implementers, and really plan out how you want your operator groups to be, because it's a really complex but powerful way of setting up your campaign instance to work exactly how you want to. So once you've created an operator and added some operator groups and named rights to that user, you might wonder how the operator groups actually work. So they work within a folder view and restriction way. Let's go back to the Explorer and take an example. So for access management, you will notice that it sits within administration. If I was to right click on the properties of administration, you can see a security tab. Now within this security tab, you will be able to add operators or operator groups. Best practice for me is adding operator groups. This means that we don't have to have single operators accessing these folder views, where instead we can have an operator group and have operators within that group. It's important to note that the folder view works on a parent-child structure. So any security rights that you give to the parent folder, for example administration, will filter down through all the child folders. For this example, let's add an operator group to the administration. So I click add. Again, you have to change the drop down view. You want to add an operator group. We want to add administrator. Now we have the option to give this operator group read, write, or delete access to the administration folder. In my opinion, administrators are the highest level of operator group and probably should have read, write, delete to these areas. So let's do this and let's click save. Now if we check some of the child folders for the administration, you will notice that if we right click, properties, security, you can see that the administrator operator group has also been added to this production area with the same read, write, delete. Without getting into too much detail with this topic, and maybe it's a good topic for a separate webinar, there are some things to consider. For example, you do not want to give everyone read, write, delete access to every single folder within a parent folder. So there are though examples where it's important that what users have what I would call access in the background. So for example, within administration and production, if we look at the folder objects created automatically and expand on this, you can see there are a lot of things in here around approvals pending, campaign delivery templates, campaign workflow templates, and campaign workflows. Most operators do not need access to these from a visibility point of view. However, they do need access to these in the background. What do I mean by that? I mean that you would click on the Objects Created Automatically folder, you would right click, Properties, Security, again we can see the administrator that we added earlier, you would add, and let's think of someone maybe like a campaign manager, someone who we know will be sending out deliveries, maybe approving workflows, working on templates, but we don't want them to be in the administration area looking at production technical workflows. So what we do is we click OK, and what we do here then is we leave them with read-write access and click Save. Now, because we have only given this user, our operator, access to this folder within administration, and we haven't given them access in the parent folder through here, this user will not see these folders. However, they do have some read-write access in the background, and this allows for them to be able to then trigger workflows, create templates, work on templates without having error messages. If you find that when you're using a user and you see something like does not have permission error message, it is most likely that that person's permissions have been restricted because of their operator group to that certain folder. It's something that I will talk about in a different webinar, and it's something that's really important because it happens quite a lot when trying to make sure that you restrict or give the right access through folders. So that gives a little overview of access management within Adobe Campaign. Next, let's move on to looking at external accounts. So within the administration folder, we expand, we go to platform, and we click on external accounts. You might wonder what an external account is, but here I can show you. So if we click on the first one, the AEM instance, so let's say we are using Adobe Experience Manager in our company as well, and we create our email templates and our content in there, and we want to synchronize some of those email templates to be used in deliveries. This is where we would configure our external account. So you can see that in this sandbox there is an AEM instance set up. Now it does not work because we're missing the important server link, but here you would label your AEM instance. So maybe you want to label it AEM instance Veritier, and the internal name is what's used. It's obviously AEM type. You click enabled. You would add your AEM server link. You then would give in Experience Manager itself, create a user that can look and synchronize at those templates. So it's important to work with your Experience Manager colleagues to create a campaign operator, maybe call it campaign operator, set it a password so that when that external account tries to access Experience Manager, there is no credential issues, and then we click save. And this is how you would configure the external account. So next, maybe you want to use an SFTP. Maybe you want to use an SFTP location for adding customer data or large files of campaign tracking, whatever it is. Again, you would follow a similar format and process to enabling the AEM instance. You want to add the server location, you want to add the port, the account and password, and again you would click save. Maybe then the next one you want to set up is what's called the execution instance. This is something that we will talk about when we talk about the message center in this webinar, but it's also a very important one. Within all Adobe Campaign production environments, there is what's called the marketing instance and the real-time instance. The real-time instance is one that is used for transactional mails, for example, order confirmation and reset password that can be triggered by events sent from your e-commerce solution. This is where you would configure that real-time instance to then be able to work within the message center. The real-time instance URL is something that has to be provided to you by the Adobe consultant. Once you have your URL, you need to select type as execution instance. You want to give it maybe a Veritier message center name. You want to click enabled. You will add the real-time instance URL here. The credentials are something that are given to you by the Adobe consultant as well. And again, you would click save. Once that's complete, this will not work obviously because there's no password, but you want to test the connection. You should then receive a successful connection, unlike this error message. After that, you want to click initialize connection, and then you're ready to go. I will touch briefly on the message center and its capabilities in this webinar, but I will do a further deep dive into the message center and how events can trigger the different transactional messages that you may want to send in a future webinar. So next, let's look at technical workflows. So within administration, we'll expand on production, and you can see this folder, technical workflows. Now within the out-of-the-box technical workflows, you have things like tracking, database cleanup, billing, so for example, the bill that gets sent to your Adobe consultant and whatnot. Now, within a real production environment, you may have some other workflows here. For example, import, export of data from your other, maybe a Salesforce CRM, maybe from a data workbench, whatever that is. And if you want to add a new folder for creating these workflows, you will right click on technical workflows, add new folder, and the folder is process workflows. Then you might want to call it data import, click enter, and here you have a clean folder to start creating some workflows. Now workflows is something that will take a very long time and something that we will go into in a different webinar. I'd like to briefly touch on another folder within administration. So if you expand on platform and you click on options, within options you can enable a lot of some cool things. What I'm going to focus on here is how to enable the connection, for example, between your Adobe Target instance and your campaign. So if you just type TNT, you'll see TNT Edge Server. You always leave this the same, and then you'll see TNT tenant name. For TNT tenant name, what you want to do here is type in your domain name from Target, which can be found within the settings. So it would be something like Veritier Target, and it's that simple. You click save, and that now means that from a campaign side, you've set up the configuration, and the rest has to just be completed within Target. This means that you could use Adobe Target and Adobe Campaign, for example, to create some personalized offers in Target that change depending on a recipient's location, their gender, their buying habits, their average spend. And the moment that that campaign then gets sent to a customer of yours, on opening of that email, the offers inside will dynamically change depending on, for example, that customer's location or that customer's spend, like we just discussed. Another feature within options is the ability to enable the new audit feature that Adobe Campaign have released in their 9.031 release, I believe. And within here, what you can do is you'll see audit, data schema, audit, enable all options and workflows. So this is giving you the option to enable or disable the audit trail on workflows, the audit trail on options, modifications, and the audit trail on data schemas, and also all of the audit trail. So you can see it's very simple. If you want to enable it, it's a 1, and if you want to disable it, it's a 0. And you hit save. But for this instance, let's keep it as a 1 because I would like to show you the feature later in this webinar. So we mentioned earlier the message center within Adobe Campaign. There are two ways to access it. So within administration, expand on message center. You can see here that you've got a lot of technical out-of-the-box workflows related to the message center around the processing of events, batch events, updating events, import of tracked URLs, etc. Those are something that I will go into in a future webinar, but for now I'd like to show you the different transactional mail templates that come out of the box. So you can see here you've got subscription templates, you've got password reset, and these templates are things that you can create and get triggered by what are called real-time events. So these real-time events, to give you a real-life scenario, could be triggered by a hybris e-commerce. When a customer submits an order to your platform, this event then triggers the order confirmation email, and then maybe in the future the order has been sent. So there's a really powerful part of Adobe Campaign that is set up on the real-time instance, and something that I will go into a lot more detail at a future time. And just to close off on the transactional mail topic, you can see here you will be able to see all your deliveries that have been sent. And as this is a sandbox, there may not be too many in here, but yeah. So subscription template, again, we get a script error, but if we go to preview, it's not great, but you can see, you're now subscribed, and this has been sent to someone who is subscribed to your e-commerce platform. So another important feature within Campaign is something called typology rules. So this is part of the campaign optimization, and it's a module which lets you control, filter and monitor the sending of your deliveries. It helps you to avoid conflicts between campaigns, and Adobe Campaign can test various combinations by applying specific constraint rules. This guarantees that the messages sent best meet the needs and expectation of the customers in keeping with your company's communication policies. To navigate to typologies, expand administration, delivery management, and typology management. In here you can see typology rules and you can see typologies. So within Adobe Campaign, there is 4 types of typologies. So you have your filtering rules, which let you exclude part of the target based on criteria. You've got your pressure rules, which lets you control marketing fatigue. You've got your capacity rules, which lets you limit the sort of loads to guarantee optimal processing conditions. And you've got your control rules. These let you check the validity of messages before they're sent. So here you can see you've got your typology type. This is kind of the parent of the typology rules. So think of this as the folder where your typology rules are stored. So you can see you've got default typology. Within this, you've got the rules, so all the different rules that are in the other folder, and these then become part of that typology type. It's important to remember that a delivery can only reference one typology type, but within this, of course, there are numerous typology rules. So as an example, let's just have a look inside the default typology rules. So you can see here we've got one around subject validation. We've also got one around the unsubscription link. So if I go back to the typology rules folder and I look for the subject validation, you can see here that this is a typology rule for email channel, and the phase is at the start of the personalization. So what this means is that this will check before when you run the analysis on your delivery that the email sender does not contain characters which may trigger problems on certain mail agents, and it checks also that the subject isn't empty. Now, within this, you can see that this has a label, which is the name, and again, another internal name. The rule type is control, as we talked about. Control rules are those that let you check the validity of messages before they're sent. The channel is email, and the level is error. So what we have here is we've got different levels. Error basically will mean that it will stop the delivery and not send it. A warning means that the delivery can still be sent, but will warn you. The rest, info, status, those are kind of just infos and statuses, as they kind of already say. So it's important when you are setting up your typology rules that you distinguish whether you want this to actually stop deliveries being sent or just to warn you. You can see here that this is active, and this means that it will work. It is basically enabled. So let's have a look at the unsubscription link. Oh, sorry. Unsubscription link validation. Again, you can see the label, the internal name, another control rule type, email channel, but this time it's a warning. So this will check for at least one opt-out URL in the content of your delivery. But instead of stopping a delivery if there is no opt-out URL, this will just warn the user before they confirm the delivery. So you will see in the analysis of a delivery warning and unsubscription link validation, you can choose to continue to send, or you can then go back and review. So typology rules are really, really important, and I will actually go into where you can set those within a delivery at the end of this webinar. So I mentioned that I would show the new feature released in Adobe recently in Campaign, which is the audit feature. So if you look in their administration and you expand audit, you'll see this little camera looks kind of very privacy based, and it's called Audit Trail. Now this is something that wasn't possible previously, and it means that you can look at every modification created by a user, and in this case it's mainly admin because we just have one operator using this system at the moment. You can see the type, so we know earlier we mentioned workflow option. You might have some other types here, so you can filter. Let me just check. Anyway, it's an important thing to be able to see what has been done. So actions, you can see that something was created or modified, the date, and modified by. So this is really important, and it gives you a real overview and audit trail, as it says on the box, within Adobe Campaign. So let's now look at profiles and targets. Profiles and targets, if we expand on this, you can see that we have a recipients table. The recipients folder is where all your customer data is stored. This data is loaded through different interfaces. For example, it could be loaded from Salesforce CRM or any other CRM. It's important that you, the information that is within this folder obviously is very classified information. It contains all the information that a customer has ever given you, depending on what you import. So it's always best practice to ensure that these kind of folders are only visible to the people that you want them to be. So for example, you would, in here, as we've shown earlier, click Properties, Security, and you can see out of the box, delivery operators, campaign managers, and AEM application operators have read or read-write access. It's really, really important to restrict this because obviously it's personal information, and for GDPR purposes, it is vital. There is also within Profile and Targets the opportunity to create lists. You can see out of the box that Adobe have added some lists here around high value customers, loyalty targets, my list, etc. In my opinion, I think it's better to make lists using other Adobe products, for example, Target or Data Workbench, and actually it's better to just create customer segments. Lists are obviously a little bit older and still a feature within Adobe Campaign, but they may not be around for longer, who knows. And lastly, one place that a folder that we will look with in the profiles and targets is called predefined filters. So this is a really cool feature that lets you create some filters that can then be used for deliveries. So if you've got someone in your company who's really good with creating queries and expressions, you would let them come in here, you would create some advanced or just quite simple queries that then you can just drag into a workflow later on, and we'll show you that in the next example. So we'll focus on this birthday. So this is one that will query every day, find people who are in your recipient table whose birthday it is, and you can use that for recurring birthday offer, email delivery, or SMS, whatever you want. To create these filters, you're just clicking New, and here you'll give it a name, and then this is where you can basically do what you like. So you can use recipient, you can expand on any of the tables that are linked. So if you've got some interest, you've got some geolocation data on that recipient, if you've got their postal address, their preferences, etc. You can be really, really advanced here, but you can also be really simple. And that's the sort of beauty of Adobe Campaign and the expression builders. So let's move on to the last part of the webinar, and I'd like to show you a little quick demo of creating a campaign and a recurring delivery for a birthday offer. So when I'm creating campaigns and deliveries, I like to use the home view. I just feel it's a little bit easier to use. You click campaigns, again we're getting some of these script errors, but here you can see on the left we've got create, you've got campaign, delivery, task, you can expand more, application, delivery, offer, plan, whatever you like. So let's quickly create a campaign. So you click create campaign, you give it a name, let's say Mark's birthday offer. And then here you'll see that whatever is red is mandatory. So we have to link this to a program. Think of a program as one down from your plan. So you've got a 2018 marketing plan, and within that you might have your birthday program. But since we don't have that created, let's just take events and competitions. You want a schedule, you can just say, let's give it a year, and let's just give it a description. This is the Vertier birthday campaign. Click OK, and now it opens up. You can see here we have the name of Mark's birthday offer. We've got targeting workflows. This is the little dashboard, so you'll see if you've got any tasks to do. Here you'll see any of the sort of successful deliveries, the reports on the deliveries, and this is kind of a cool little area. But let's just jump into the targeting workflows and create a delivery. So from here, we will go to this option and we'll select the scheduler. So let's drag and drop the scheduler in, and let's double click. And here you can see that there is no scheduling defined at the moment. Please press change to define the frequency. So let's click change, and let's say the frequency type as daily. Let's click next. And for a birthday campaign, we might want it to start querying, let's say 8 a.m. every day, and click next. Permanent validity, so we don't want it to ever end. We just want to keep it going until it reaches the validity of the parent campaign. Let's click next. And you can see here that it's going to give you all these days and times that it's going to run at. So click finish. And you can see that this has changed, triggering at 8 AM daily, Europe, London. Let's click OK. So next we want to drag in our query. So let's drag in the query. And if you remember, we showed the predefined filters. So this is how we can use them. So let's double click on the query, edit query. And you can see here, if you didn't want to use a predefined filter, you can create your own from scratch during this delivery, or let's just expand on user filters and click birthday today and click finish. And now you can see here that the query is going to be the birthday today filter that has been already created. Let's click OK. And then if we want to choose delivery, so we have recurring delivery, other deliveries, we've got push notifications, we've got Facebook, Twitter. These are all obviously need set up separately, but it's pretty cool that we have these options. Let's just do a simple email delivery. And of course, in here, you might have some templates set up. Out of the box, we don't have too many, so let's just stick with email delivery. Let's call it happy birthday. And let's click continue. And here you can see that you can create a subject line. You can create all the content. Obviously, you might have some templates created, and that will speed up this process. It's very rare that you're going to create this from scratch in the delivery itself. But let me just show you some quick overview of some of the features within this. So previously we talked about typology rules. So within the properties of the delivery, you can see along the top here, we've got typology. And already it's been set to default typology. So these are the typology types that we talked about, and within these have the typology rules. So you would set this, you would click OK. You can also go in here and set approvals. So if you want content approval enabled, you would click. You would choose a reviewer. So let's choose the mark operator that we created earlier. Oh, sorry about that. And you can see that this user will be sent an email once we want to send this delivery to make sure that the content is okay. For this kind of recurring delivery, you may want to switch this off, and you've already approved the content, so you're happy with how it is. Let's just turn it off for now. And again, the target approval, so this is instead of approving the content, you'd be approving the target of the query. Budget approval is the budget. So let's just turn some of these off. Confirm the delivery before sending. You might want to keep this on just for sort of an extra little bit of security. And let's go back, make sure the typology is set, and click OK. Another thing in here, and this is where you would set up your connection between AM and campaign to synchronize your email templates. So you would go to advanced, you come to the bottom, you see content editing mode, and you drop down and click AM. You then would select your AM account. Unfortunately, when I click OK and try and synchronize, there will be an error message. So let's just try it. So OK. And then you will see now that you've got this synchronize button, which when I click, we obviously will not have anything to synchronize. But here is where then you will get your different email templates that you can search for your birthday one, for example, and then synchronize it into that template. You also have the option to drop in some personalization blocks. Again, you might already have these built into your templates, but you can see here that you can add in last name, first name, title, email. You can add in some also some address information. You can see here, this is our dynamic image served by Adobe Target that we set up. You've got your unsubscription link, which is important for your typology rules. You've got your mirror page as well. So there's a lot of cool little things you can add. You can also set up your offers. So another feature that we'll talk about in a future webinar is Offer Engine. And this is where you would select the sort of offers that you want to maybe serve if you don't decide to use the Adobe Target route. So something we'll go into in the future, but something that's really, really useful and powerful within Adobe Campaign. So let's just try and save this. Happy birthday. You can see that the targeting population will be resulted from upstream, so that's from our query. The from, when you default in the very beginning, you remember we showed the default sender address, that will be here. So let's just click save, or let's add some content. Just hello, this happy birthday. Here's a special offer. Thanks. And save. And now your query is pretty much set up. And because you have the scheduler, once you click start, this will run every single day. It will query people whose birthday it is and send them a happy birthday email. So to start this, you would click start. Unfortunately, because this is a sandbox, we probably will not have too much customers whose birthday it is today, and also the actual delivery of the email will not work. But this has been the sort of overview of how you would set up a birthday offer campaign. So thank you very much for listening to this first webinar. I hope you were able to follow it well. If you've got any more questions, please reach out to me, but this should be the start of a nice series that will kick off around the Adobe Campaign Classic. And yes, look forward to the next one. Thank you.